drives us to be afraid? And why do we crave it? Well, you'll find that out today. I'm Chris Gordon, and joining me is Lily Hernandez, who is going to bring the science of fear to our conversation. And of course, Danny J, our producer of DJB Productions Network, joining us, and looking forward to it. Welcome to Bite Me.
Thank you, Chris. What's scary about this? What an interesting show this is going to be. I feel that we've compiled a group of people to be on this show to really dwell into what is fear. Why is it such a thing that you should move away from it, but you're drawn closer to it like a moth to a flame? And I think that we're going to really get heavily into it. And I think we have people to have some great views on this, and it's going to be something really, really crazy.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So the definition of fear. Let's start with you, Lily. Give us a definition of fear from a science standpoint.
Well, as far as the science is concerned, I'm going to talk about things from the human aspect of fear, and then how our brain works and how our brain processes fear. Fear is really at its core a response to a stimuli. And the best example I can give of this is, let's say you're scared of spiders and you wake up in the morning, you go get your cup of coffee, and you see a giant spider on your counter. And you're like, holy shit, there's a spider. There are lots of things that happen in your body in that fraction of a second. But really what fear is in itself is us realizing that we are mortal. Because you think that you're scared of the spider, but in actuality, you're scared of the threat that the spider poses to you and your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. So it's not the actual, are we getting to like a fight or flight response at this point?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So if I see and believe me, when I see a spider, my voice goes 3 octaves higher, and my wife comes to the rescue. She's like, oh, just move aside, I got this. But I do the same thing. I see a spider, and I freak out. I have arachnophobia. But so what you're saying, which I find really fascinating, is it's not even the physicality of the spider, it's what I'm mentally attaching to it.
Exactly. It's the experience. Just like people who are afraid of heights aren't afraid of being up high. They're afraid of the fall. They're afraid of, oh my gosh, if I fall, I'm going to die. People who are scared of water that are hydrophobic, they're not scared of the water itself. It isn't the water that's going to touch you that's going to scare you. It's the fear of, oh my gosh, I can't swim. I'm going to drown. I'm going to die. And so that's where it comes from at its core. Like, evolutionarily speaking, we as a species had to assess our areas and assess the threats that were around us. And that's where the fear instinct, and that's where fight or flight came from.
Okay. So
like if we're talking about the fight or flight response itself, starts in this place in your brain called the amygdala. They're 2 tiny little almond-shaped things that are above your ear, like in your temple area, behind your eyes.
Okay.
And the amygdala is a structure that recognizes fear and ties emotion and experience to it. So once, let's say back when you're little, you touch the stove and you burn the shit out of your hand. You're going to know from then on, I can't touch the stove. And it's your amygdala working, reminding you, hey, you burned the shit out of yourself. You hurt yourself. So don't do that again.
Right.
That's the amygdala working. So whenever you have a fear response, it starts in the amygdala. Your pupils dilate, your heart starts pounding, and those things are survival instincts. Because at that point, you have to decide, am I standing and am I going to knuckle up, or am I running? Or, what your response is going to be to that. Your pupils dilate, you start to see things more clearly because your body
Right.
thinks, I need to save myself.
Yeah, it goes into
Your
that defense. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's where it comes from. There are a lot of different parts of the brain that are at work, like your hypothalamus tells your sympathetic nervous system, okay, we're on alert. Let's try and figure this stuff out. Your prefrontal cortex decides whether or not you're going to have a response and then packs that stuff away for you for later.
Now, let me ask you this though:
Wow.
is it something where, like the actual result, the stimuli, the heart racing, this is something that happens in not only fear but excitement, joy, etc. So, is it the fact that the body's reacting only really one way, up or down, and then we're attaching to it to say, well, the reason why I'm up is because of this versus that.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
And like I was talking about your hypothalamus before, your hypothalamus tells your adrenal glands to produce
Mhm.
adrenaline. That's
Right.
where the craving comes from. Because once we feel that adrenaline, anybody that's felt their adrenaline run knows what a rush that is.
Yep.
Mhm.
But in the same aspect, so your body's going up, at some point, your body needs to bring yourself back to homeostasis, which means back to the baseline, back to keeping everything normal. And in order to do that, your brain releases a crap load of neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, and that shit feels good. And so
Mhm.
that's why people are like, oh my gosh, I love the adrenaline rush. But then you get that rush of neurotransmitters in your brain that make you feel really good, and that's where the craving comes from. It's
So,
Wow.
that feeling.
and I think right there is now you're talking about why we crave it and why horror movies and horror, if you will, or thrillers, even suspense things, that's the drug.
Well, does that happen to be? Let me ask you this though: is that something where, like, it just so happens that is the result, the response, and the effect that comes with it happens to be an afterthought, or is the feeling that we love the love feeling or that craving feeling something to keep us doing it? Like, in other words, like, does it go further than that, or is it just happen to be a result?
Well, of course, everything can go further than that.
Yeah.
That's why people get addicted to different types of psychotropic meds,
Right.
because we're forcing our brains at that point to have a response, or giving another stimuli that the drug itself is telling the brain, this is what we need you to do. And so that feeling is what we love. It's just like drug addiction. That feeling of being high, if you get stuck on that and that's all you think about, it
Hmm.
becomes an addiction. The way
Right.
you can adjust fear, though, is like if I like watching scary movies, and I do, oh my gosh, do I love it. I get that adrenaline rush, but I know I'm safe. I know it's a movie. I'm fine. There isn't a real threat, and I still get the drug. And so
Right.
that's why those kinds of things are like that's why people run after that.
Now, explain to
It's
me
a
this
safe
though.
way to get it.
Explain to me this though. You like that. You look for it, and then you get that rush from it. There are people that don't like it and don't react the same way. Why is that? Is it something where they're able to control because of their, you understand what I'm saying? Like, in other words, I don't know if it's a conscience saying I'm going to suppress this feeling because I don't like fear, but why wouldn't it be the same for everybody? Why is it that there are people that just don't get afraid or aren't into that, whereas you do?
Well, so human beings are all unique. Just like we have different fingerprints, we have different responses to different emotions. Some people feel that adrenaline rush and love the feeling. And other people get that adrenaline rush and are like, it makes me feel sick. I don't like it. I don't like it. And so there's a different response. Different people have different responses to everything, obviously.
Right. Is there?
So
No, I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. That would it's interesting because years ago we were speaking before we came on about heights. We're afraid of being up high. I was never a roller coaster fan. that adrenaline rush didn't do it for me. However, horror movies gave me that same rush, and it was enjoyable. So I think that's the thing. It depends on the particular thing, and it depends on the person and whether that particular rush resonates with that person. You know, I have a friend of mine who will do roller coasters all day long, and I can't even look at them. Freaks me out.
Let me
But
ask
I
you.
can sit there and you want to talk about, let's, hey, you want to watch a Stephen King marathon? Yeah, because as Lily, you were saying, there's I know I'm safe, but it's also it's poking a nerve somewhere where you're like, I don't know. There's certain, for me,
There's a threshold.
yeah,
Right.
there's a threshold that I will flirt with on particular movies, especially psychologically, where
Yes,
it's
those are
getting
the
you here.
best.
Because it's the threat the slasher movies, that
Mhm.
I don't know. It's very cool, but it was the psychological horror stuff that really, because I would walk away from those movies and I would still be engaged, even though, as you said, I was coming back to a baseline. I wasn't coming back to that baseline alone. There was something with me and reminding me. It's
Yes.
weird.
And that's your brain at work. It's just like when you get home from the movie theater and you're laying down in your bed, you're going to sleep and you're still like, huh, that really got to me. Or when you're little, like myself in particular, I watched it when I think I was in third grade.
Oh, Tim
Tim
Curry?
Curry scared the shit out of me.
Right.
And for the longest time, like, I don't know, my family was incredibly irresponsible letting me watch that movie, but I had also read the book. And so after I saw the movie, I was convinced that he was under my bed. I couldn't sleep because I knew as soon as I fall asleep, he's going to crawl out from under my bed. Like, he's
And
going to get me.
and all you saw was Tim Curry in a clown outfit. Like it was embrazened here. It was like,
Yes.
yeah.
And strangely enough, because the amygdala works the way it does, and because it ties an emotion to the experience, I can't look at Tim Curry without seeing him as Pennywise and being like, gosh. If I ever met him in person, I know I'd be starstruck, but I know I'd also probably pee my pants. And so, there's that. I'd be like, oh my God, Mr. Curry, you're amazing. So inspiring. I love that I'm meeting you. I'm so sorry I just peed my pants.
Does anybody have a specific or a like maybe a one-off type of feeling that is based on fear? Like it's kind of hard to communicate because I know what I'm thinking. Like, for example, like you talked about heights. Like some people get vertigo.
Yeah.
Some people get that, and I guess it's vertigo where like everything tends to go like this.
Yeah, your sense of depth and everything else.
It goes
Depth
off.
perception, yes.
What I physically get is I get a underlining feel that gravity is pulling me harder than it was before. So, for example, if I look over a railing, my feet get very heavy. I feel that. And I feel like I'm in the process of falling right now. Like,
well,
even
that's
though I'm
how I
looking
feel.
over. Yeah.
Right. If I look over an edge, I feel like I'm falling.
Yes. And
even if I'm watching it on a video, I'm like, oh, I'm done. I'm stuck. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's extreme with me.
That's a defense mechanism.
Okay.
And that's so that saying about perception being reality in respect to your brain is true. Your version of what's happening right now is way different than my version of what's happening right now.
Okay.
I could talk for hours about this. Just like your perception of the color blue is completely different than mine. And so the way you are experiencing what is happening to you at that moment where you're standing on a ledge or where you're looking over, that is your perception of reality. You feel like you're about to fall. You feel like you're falling because your brain is telling you that's what's happening. And that's what's crazy. The human brain is so complex. What we know about it, we've only scratched the surface.
it really scares me
Yes.
because I, in the sense that when you talk about perception, now that's another thing that you don't really associate with fear sometimes or whatever, or you do lightly. It's not something that comes up to mind. But literally, what if there is no color? What if the world is flat? What if we aren't there? There is no depth perception, and it's all in our heads.
Well,
Almost.
okay, so
Go
so
ahead,
the
Lily.
Earth is not flat.
Yeah.
The Earth is definitely not flat.
Yeah, look at your logo. The Earth's not flat.
It's not at all. It's a nice big round.
Look at your
globe.
logo proves it.
But speaking on color,
Right.
what you are seeing are, this is another hour-long conversation that we could have.
Yeah.
There isn't color. What you are seeing is light refraction, and
Mhm.
we could talk about that. Like, that's a whole other show in itself because that's physics. But like I was saying before, your perception of what you are seeing, even right now, the color of my hair, if you're looking at me right now,
Yeah.
is completely different to you than it is to me, than it is to Chris, than it is to anybody who's watching this right now.
Right. That's scary.
So does that play into the idea that the subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy?
Well, yes and no, and it depends on who you ask.
Okay.
The subconscious helps to unpack things that we've experienced throughout the day. Just like this is why sleep is so important for humans, because we experience things all day. Our brain takes in a lot of information, and there's some stuff that we don't need anymore, like this
Okay.
conversation, or like anything. Like that was just me being a smartass. Like my husband telling me that he's going to take out the trash. Okay, cool. Thanks for doing that. I don't care anymore. And so your brain, while you're sleeping, unpacks all of the things that have happened to you throughout the day and decides what you need to keep, what experiences are important, and what things are not important anymore. And so, you toss them out. And that's what's crazy is your subconscious and your brain itself is deciding which things are important. So when there's an emotion tied to it, a strong emotion, we're less likely to forget. Just like the way our olfactory glands work, and the olfactory system itself. That's why you can smell perfume or, a certain type of smell, and it'll immediately trigger a memory. And
Yep.
you can remember where you were when you smelled that smell.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, the brain is so complex.
You
It's
want to
an
hear something?
incredible
Sid?
organ.
You bring up such a great thing because this is a funny story, but it is very scary in this sense. Years ago, I had a friend of mine, female, who loved Calvin Klein's Obsession, the cologne, right? And what she used to do is she loved the smell so much that they have I guess like the aftershave, which is like the cream, right? And she would do, when she shaved her legs, she would lather her legs with that because she loved the smell. So being friends with her, being close with her, and nice looking woman, blah, 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 you start to associate 1, 2, and 3, right? So during this time frame, I go to the movies with a couple buddies, and I have my back to the line, and I'm talking to my buddy, and I smell Calvin Klein Obsession, and I legit start getting turned on, right? Right? And I have no reason to because I'm talking to my buddies or whatever, and I turn around, and this is this big dude just saying it smells like Calvin Klein. I'm like, this is such a horrible, just to screw
What are
my
you doing
life up.
later?
Yeah, like, I'm like, this is horrible. But it's amazing what the brain will do. And it leads me into something else, which you might really get into this, is I feel like the brain, or I feel like computers are modeled after our brain. In other words,
They only wish.
yeah, it's to a
They're
point, right?
trying so hard, it's never gonna happen.
But the problem is that in a computer, yeah, all the functionality is there as far as storage and recall and stuff like that, but there's no emotion beyond it. And I feel like the emotions that we have are almost like our supervisors, our managers, that kind of lead the job function to where it needs to be and do things in the right way. when you talk about and you see these movies about like AIs and stuff like that, where they're kind of void of emotion, don't they always, in one shape or form, they sit there and say, all right, this doesn't calculate right. There's a problem here. I need to eliminate this. And the elimination is always the human being, because we're the ones with the emotions. Isn't it funny that, like, if we, for whatever reason, were able to avoid emotion, the kind of depths that we could go into, because of the fact that I think fear, amongst anything else, it's something that governs how we make decisions and how we in fear, we talk about fear. Oh, you're fear of falling. You're a fear of somebody slashing you or getting stabbed. But there's fear of embarrassment. There's fear of, loneliness. There's fear. Fear goes in so many different directions. And I think if we didn't have those emotional cutoffs to say, hey, be careful where you're stepping, we would be like insane. Like,
Well,
we'd be like
yes.
zombies.
Yes, and that's because fear itself is a conscious experience. It's an
Okay.
experience in itself. Like I said before, at its core, has to do with our mortality.
Yes.
Has to do with us being afraid of something terrible happening to us and us coming to some type of harm or pain or even death. But fear in itself is a conscious experience that's tied to our emotions, and that's what makes it so horrifying but also exhilarating all at the same time.
Right. Now, you're a comic book fan, Lil. One of the comic book characters out there that are very well known is Daredevil. And Daredevil is the man without fear. Now, this is a guy who has a scenario where he can't see. So therefore, he has to rely on his other senses, which I guess would make it a very fearful experience, because of the fact that he doesn't know his surroundings. He doesn't know, if he's doing the right thing or going in the right direction, just on a physical level. Now, if something like that should physically happen, would fear play a larger part in something like that? Say, if you did lose your sight, or what have you, or is the comic book just kind of like fabricating a little bit more than what really would happen with someone that maybe lost a sense and gained their other senses would pick up?
Well, I
You
mean,
understand the question?
obviously,
Yeah.
yes, obviously
Yeah.
comic books exaggerate
Yes.
everything. Um, you do develop heightened other senses when you lose one. And that's because your brain needs to pull in as much information as possible to make sense of what's going on around you,
Right.
good or bad. Um, but it's interesting that you talk about that, because if you think about it, like, think about just little kids that you know, or, if you have kids yourself. Kids are funny because a lot of them are fearless. And they're fearless because a lot of what we experience as far as fear is concerned is learned socially. Like you were talking about loneliness and all of that stuff. That's something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But there are, like, you'll notice, like, babies will crawl and crawl around, and we have to watch where they are. Let's say we're upstairs and our baby's, crawling around. We put up baby gates. And why do we put up baby gates? Because they will crawl around, and until they experience that fall, they're going to roll down the stairs. Or, if they're learning to walk into the stairs or touch the stove. We learn from
Right.
our experiences and we process our experiences, and our brain is so amazing because it helps us to make sense of the world around us. Baby brains are incredible. If you have
Wow.
access to a baby,
And I think that
let the
goes back.
kiddo run around and watch how fearless they are, because they don't know yet.
But that goes back to what you were also saying earlier, Lily, about how we all experience things differently. So
Hmm.
back when I was younger, I was heavily into BMX. And I
Mm-hmm.
had friends that had multiple broken bones from doing these crazy stunts. But they would get back on that bike as soon as that cast came off. And because of that rush, they were like, I know I might wipe out. I might be in the hospital again for another 2 weeks. I don't care. Whereas I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm good. You know, I took that experience and said, no, I don't want to have that again. In other words, the payoff isn't worth the possible result.
Yes, yes, you have to outweigh the benefits and the risks.
Right.
And you are deciding, your brain is helping you to decide based on the experiences and the emotions that you've tied to those experiences,
To that
whether or
experience.
not, yes, whether or not you're going to get back on that bike or not.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, that makes sense now.
That's crazy. You know, we can literally go on about this, like you said, forever. I mean, this is such an amazing topic. I mean, I think, you know, it goes down to where we try and filter in as much fear as we can without it being an overload. Hence movies, hence, like you said, going in BMX and being doing stunts and parkour and all this other crazy stuff. You know, whatever level we can take is what we take in and digest. Just such an amazing thing. In closing, you know, what can we say about fear? Pros and cons.
Fear is essential. We need it because if we don't have it, then we cannot process our environment and sustain ourselves as organisms. You know, like it's an ecological theory that fear itself is essentially functional, that we
Right.
need it to survive. Because if not, we could, you know, like cavemen, walk into a bear cave and get eaten. Or, you know, like I was talking about babies that roll down some stairs and break your neck and die. And so it's an essential thing. It's scary. Some of us are adrenaline junkies and we need that
Mhm.
rush. Some of
Right.
us are addicted to those neurochemicals in our body that gets released so that we can maintain homeostasis, but we cannot survive without it.
Right.
That's crazy.
And I there's also that point of being able to control it, recognizing it for what it is, that it is a
Mhm.
survival instinct at the end of the day.
Right.
But also, you know, being able to balance, is that really something I should be afraid of? Going back to the spider, is that spider really going to do what I have put in my mind? It's going to be like the alien face hugger, and it's going to, you know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I mean, it can get to that point. That's why the phobias become to the point where they have to see somebody about it, because they go into a kitchen and oh, I have to shut my kitchen down. I can't go in that kitchen ever again, because all they now see is spiders, you know, going everywhere. So there is that
Yes.
where
And you've
finding,
created that reality in
right.
your mind that,
Yeah.
that the spider's gonna jump on your face and suck
Yep.
your soul out,
All
or
right.
you know,
So
whatever
we
you're
know Chris
doing.
doesn't
That's
like
exactly
spiders.
what I think is going to happen.
So Chris doesn't like spiders. Lil, what is one fear that you could constantly say, "Oh, I just hate that."
Okay, so going back to my whole Tim Curry phobia, and I'm not scared of the man, it's just the clown. That was the only thing that I can really say that I've ever been actually scared of. And here's why. Because I understand fear the way that I do, and because I've known about it, you know, just being curious and reading way too many books when I was younger, um, I can acknowledge that if I'm scared of something or if something bothers me or worries me, it's because I think I might die. I'm at the
Mm,
point now, because I'm a type 1 diabetic and I've spent lots of time in the ICU. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
yeah.
And so there isn't really a whole lot that scares the crap out of me unless there's a threat to one of my children.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Sure.
God help everybody, because I'm gonna come
Sure.
get you. But that's really the only thing. Aside from sometimes I still see a clown and I'm like,
I
but
don't
it's
like
not.
clowns. I don't like clowns at all, and I think that is a larger phobia than a lot of people like to realize. Because a lot of people make fun of that, but I'm like, no, there's never been a good clown ever in
No.
history and in fiction. There's never been a good clown, never at
So
all.
it's funny that you say that, because I was talking to Sean last night about this, because we were talking about, you know, just things in general, and we were talking about my fear of clowns, and he thinks it's funny too. When I was in high school, I developed an interest in serial killers, and so
Hmm.
I started reading things about serial killers, and came across John Wayne Gacy, and I
Yeah.
was just like, oh hell no! And so like
No.
that's even more reason for me not to like clowns. Look at
No.
this dude.
There's
And,
never
you
been
know,
a good one. And looking at history, you have the Joker, you have John Wayne Gacy, you have Tim Curry, you have Killer Clowns from Outer Space. They
Oh
came
my
through
God.
aliens,
that
right?
was such
They
a
came
great
down.
movie.
Right, they came down. And then there's a couple others, but I'm like, there's never been a good one. There's no, and then Terrifier. If you want to be scared, if you really want to be scared of clowns, watch Terrifier. Terrifier 2 is in production right now.
Wow.
It's a graphic movie. It's really, really like deathly scary to see this character on screen. I'm telling you right now.
I'm gonna check it out today.
Not like Veronica, where they're like, "Oh, I had to turn it off." Bullshit. I watched the whole movie. I was disgusted. I had to watch some subtitles with it, the whole 9 yards. I need English movies, but Terrifier, you're going to be like, like just like drooling, like you're like, holy shit, this is a scary shit. For me, my biggest fear above anything else is typing in the wrong number on a vending machine. I swear to God.
A vending machine?
You know, like if it says D4,
Oh yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to hit D3 and get something I don't like. I swear to God, I am not joking with you. I sit there if you watch me at a vending machine, I put the money in, right? And I look at the number, and then I look again, and I look at that, and I go, the D3. I go like that. I'm afraid I'm going to hit the wrong number and get something I don't want. And that's a big fear for me. Like I said, this has got to be a Maury Povich type of scenario. For me
That's
to come
hilarious.
on. But that's a fear I have.
That's something new that I've heard. All right.
Bring it to your kids. I'm telling you.
I know. I'm gonna have to ask them.
You know, like when nobody talks about it until somebody else brings it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Maury, especially the Maury Povich thing.
Right.
You got
Exactly.
the
Yeah. Like they know
results
who that
back,
is.
And judging from the lie detector, Mars bars are not your thing.
Mars bars are not yours
Yeah.
at all. Thank you. Get one out. Guys, what a great time. I thank you guys for coming on. Lily, you're such a fountain of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Lily. That was very educational. That was very
Anytime. I always have science facts to just share with the world. My students all the time, you know, they love hearing all of the science facts.
Gotta love the
Awesome.
nerds. Gotta love them.
Great.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Guys, check out the subscription button down below. Hit that notification bell. Make sure you're leaving some comments. Tell us what scares you. I really would like to see these comments. And
Yes,
see
I want to know
really
too.
what fears everybody. You know, what scares you? What is something that is like, it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be anything at all, but put it down there. It's YouTube, so nobody knows who you are. So just pop it down there and let us know. But share this channel, share this show, and make sure that you're telling everybody the brand new show right here on the DJB Productions Network, Bite Me, starring my good friends Chris Gordon, Lily Hernandez. We have Samantha Sparks. She's not on today, but she'll be on very, very soon. Guys, for these guys here, my name's Danny J. Until next time, turn on the lights.
Nice.